Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking with Edward Bowen at the Old Government House Hotel here in Guernsey about his relocation story, relocating to this beautiful island. Welcome, Edward.
Thank you very much indeed.
So we're going to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, the decision-making process around relocating to Guernsey. But first of all, how long have you lived here on the island?
So we've lived here now for 5 years. Probably one of the best decisions we ever made, and we're absolutely loving every moment of it.
Fantastic. So cast your mind back. So what was it that first triggered your idea to move to Guernsey? How did you start exploring the idea initially?
So I suppose there's two threads to that. My wife and I actually grew up in the Channel Islands on the island of Alderney as children, and we wanted our children to enjoy a fairly free lifestyle. So that was one of the key drivers. And I guess the second was working in the UK, very long hours, high pressure environment, but also taking our security very seriously. We decided actually coming to the Channel Islands gave us much more freedom to enjoy the real qualities of life.
So it must have been an idyllic childhood on Alderney. Was it outdoorsy, sailing and things like that? I mean, what was it that you remember from your childhood in the Channel Islands?
So we had massive freedom. You had the beaches, you had nature, you had the water, and clearly that plays a very big role in our everyday lives, even now, particularly on the boating scene. And we wanted our children to enjoy that. If I think that we let our children go at 9 o'clock, they're not allowed back into the house until feeding time at 6 o'clock, you'd probably get arrested in the UK for doing that, for child neglect. In Alderney and in Guernsey, that's perfectly normal.
Yeah, because a lot of people moving here are looking for that safety and security, aren't they? It's one of the things that's up there on the list, because it's one of the key freedoms, isn't it? If you feel safe for your family.
That's absolutely right. I still say to people now, why would you lock your car door? If you lock it, no one can borrow it. And similarly with your house, we don't lock the door at night. Why would you?
And so on the business front, I mean, perhaps you could tell us a bit about the business that you run.
So I run a geophysical consultancy. It's based here in Guernsey. Most of our operations, being field-based, are all over the globe. But the headquarters are based here in a very grown-up tax jurisdiction.
Yeah, and it's a good place to run a HQ. I mean, you've got a lot of professional services firms, haven't you, on your doorstep and office space. I mean, how did you find the actual management of the business, I guess, when you came over? What were some of the decisions you made around that?
So the professional services sector here is very grown up, in fact, surprisingly so. And where it differs from the UK is that you can talk to a partner here very easily. There's no layers of middle management. If you need top level advice, you can speak to a partner directly. And that goes whether it's financial services, legal, relocation. So it's very pro people coming to the island, and people are extremely helpful.
So they're there at every turn to try and facilitate and solve problems, I guess, that you inevitably have when you're relocating. There's complexity, isn't there?
That's right. That's right.
And you're in a niche professional service that's global, so it's not that you have a local customer base. But how have you found the business environment here? Have you found there to be other people you can learn about what they're doing in their business? Is there inspiration, I guess, here in the business scene?
Very much so.
Yeah.
You're finding that a lot of businesses will work together. The networking opportunities are superb. And particularly with our business, which works across multiple tax jurisdictions, actually there's a real international feel to the professional service providers.
Doing business overseas is nothing unusual here, actually. It's the meat and drink, isn't it, of the professional firms here.
Exactly.
But you found that there's a general openness, I guess. So the networking opportunities that you plugged into, you found you were welcomed in, and even though your product is in a niche and specialist, people were keen to find out more.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that goes across across the whole board in the business environment here.
And you mentioned one of the motivators was working hard in London. Have you found that running a business here helps the lifestyle? How do you find, I suppose, the lifestyle benefits of being based here? So
there is no commuter time, and that frankly was wasted time that we've now got back to enjoy as a family. So I swam at 6:30 this morning in the sea. I then took my son to school on an electric bicycle. I was in the office by 9 o'clock with my cup of coffee. I can do all of my meetings, and we can be back kayaking when they come back from school at 4 o'clock. That's amazing.
And I guess there's one thing we've been taught over the last few years is the digital connectivity, virtual meetings. I mean, that must have, I suppose, turbocharged. I mean, you were probably already using these practices, but I think it's just put on steroids, hasn't it? And illustrated how much you can do from your desk.
It's absolutely right. And I probably shouldn't tell you, but I keep a team shirt on my boat in case I get caught out if I'm in France and a meeting comes in. The team shirt goes on, the virtual background goes on, and nobody would know that we're having more frites.
And have you found that, like in terms of internet connectivity, the infrastructure here, for running a business, does it work? You've got high-speed internet, you've got all the things. There was no surprises there in terms of setting up the business.
None at all. It's pretty grown up, and it's what you'd expect.
And have you didn't have connections per se in Guernsey before you moved, so have you found you've made friends and settled in those 5 years? It's difficult relocating anywhere, but have you found that to be welcoming?
Guernsey is incredibly welcoming. Clearly we've got a lot of friends through school and the children, but actually the local community is very welcoming across the whole board. So yes, we've made lifelong friends, and although we have no intention of moving off, those friendships are just growing all the time.
When you were thinking of relocating, what were the sort of where else did you consider? I mean, obviously, growing up in Alderney, you had a strong knowledge here. Were there any other contenders, or was this sort of the main plan, as it were?
No, I think Guernsey, I'd only been here twice, in fact, before we moved. And I turned around to my wife and said, you can live anywhere you like in the world, as long as it's in the Channel Islands, and as long as I can see my boat from the house. And Guernsey has so many grown-up travel connections. I can be in London for 9 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 6:30. I can be back on a day trip, having dinner with the family at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So your transport links are very good. You've got a very pro-business environment. Guernsey was the natural home for us to want to come to.
And before we hit record, you were telling us about your shopping trips to France. So, the connectivity is there, isn't it? For business into London or even to go and do the weekly shop in France is quite something, isn't it, really?
We're very blessed here. We're 30 miles from France. We're 20 miles up to Alderney, 20 miles to Jersey. Really, you can do anything you want from Guernsey.
And do you feel permanently settled here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And you mentioned you've got children. How old are they?
So my son is 9 and my daughter's 14, and they're loving the natural environment here. And
how do you find the schooling here? Was slotting them into schooling, moving across from the UK, was that all managed very seamlessly?
We had a fairly bumpy start, principally because a lot of the schools were full at the time when we came here. But I think nowadays there's always options, and it's about navigating your way through, working with people to find out what you can and can't do, and being flexible. Yeah. You're coming into this environment, you can't expect to just slot things in straight away. There are complications along the way, but overall they're happy, they're settled, they're doing well. Great. And above all, they want to go to school, so you can't wish for much more. Brilliant,
no, absolutely. What aspects of Guernsey life do you find the most fulfilling?
So I suppose we spend most of our time dominated by the water, whether it's swimming, kayaking, paddleboarding, boating to the other Channel Islands and to France. So we're big sea lovers, and you've got ample opportunities. You've got the West Coast and you've got the East Coast, both very, very different. But actually you can use the sea all year round here, and you just adapt and what activity you're going to do.
Did those interests also give you a social scene to start with, because you've got something that you can go and plug into? So having a passion like that is great because it gives you a start, doesn't it, on the social network?
Exactly, and there are always crazy people that want to go blow karting on Valson Beach in 30-mile-an-hour winds because it's exhilarating. It's not for everybody, but you meet lots of nutheads and you make friends.
And you're doing a fireside chat at next week's Relocate to Guernsey show in London. I mean, there you're going to be sharing, I suppose, some of your top tips for people thinking about relocating. I mean, what is it that how would you boil down your advice for someone thinking about making a move?
So I'm not very good at pontificating. I'm a doer. So I would say just do it. It's very, very simple. Clearly, if you're buying a property on the open market, that's your ticket in, and frankly, the rest is just paperwork and admin. And if you're relatively efficient, actually, it's a very straightforward process.